Day 3. I am Lubna Dajani, founder of Alternate, and I am your host for this morning session or this evening, whatever you may be again. Oh, glad we have you here, Vivian. Thank you all so much for joining us. Without further ado, I would love to hand it to our last comer and have you introduce yourself, and please pass it on to the next person. We have a lot of us here in a very short amount of time to cover this really exciting topic of the future of the workplace. So, Vivian, if you don't mind, we start, and then folks, I'd like for this to be as much of a conversation, and I have a couple of questions for you, but let's get started with at least letting everybody know who we are and get going. Thank you so very much. The floor is yours, Vivian. Okay. Well, he left. Okay, so Sam, you want to pick up?
Sure, I'll get started. Thank you for having me here because this is really exciting. My name is Sam Smeltzer. I own an organization called the Heart Center, spelled HR Art Center, and we are specializing in healing burnout using energy. I'm trained as a Chinese medicine doctor, but I'm here today because I love the world of technology. For somebody who practices things that are maybe not so close to technology, but I think that there is the balance that's really necessary that allows some really cool things to happen. So I'm excited to have this conversation.
Wow.
I guess yeah. And then I guess you wanted us to pass it, so I'll pass it to Betty because her yellow shirt is speaking to me.
I love it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You can hear me? Yes? Yay. Wonderful. Thanks, Sam. And I'm very interested in what it is that you do, so we'll connect later. But I'm Betty Danowitz. I am the founder, CEO, and the actual Betty of If You Ask Betty. And so If You Ask Betty is a couple of things. One, it's a podcast that talks about all different types of development topics for all kinds of learning professionals. I'm in sort of the learning and development industry. But also, I offer strategy for augmented reality and virtual reality when rolling it out as a learning opportunity. So that's kind of why I'm here, is to kind of talk through some of those things as well. And I'm excited to be here too. I will pass it to is it Aleda? I got it.
Yeah. Ask Betty. It's Ask Aleda. I think that's hilarious. So I reference myself as a business alchemist. So I came through the pandemic and the medical side of things. I had practices in New York City in various different aspects of the medical industry. So design, architect, operations, those are like my wheelhouses, right? In particular, and then executive advising. And I reference it as intuitive executive advising because I know the importance behind conscious awareness. So I love the sciences, neuroscience, quantum physics, epigenetics. Again, like that's all in my forte, and I incorporate that into everything that I do. So thank you for having me. Thank you, GatherVerse. And I'll turn it over to Ricky.
Hey, great to be here. Third annual GatherVerse for me. Love the community that Christopher has been developing these last couple of years. Very welcoming, lots of great people on these panels. My background is mostly in go-to-market, so business development, sales side of things, working mostly in the XR industry. So things like virtual reality collaboration has been a big focal point. There's two things I'll talk about. One is I've got my podcast, MetaRick. I think there's a lot of amazing creatives and technologists building things for the metaverse and for spatial computing and whatnot, but there's not a lot of marketing leaders and business leaders talking about how do we go to market with these tools? How do we position and talk about them? How do we buy them? How do we sell them? And so that's the main focus, is interviewing both buyers and sellers, and as well as founders of startups, to talk more about the business side of the industry. And then the second thing is I'm also leading client engagements for a company called Arthur, where we entirely focus on virtual collaboration for enterprise companies. So super relevant to today's conversation. Really excited to hear insights from the rest of the panelists and share some thoughts on how we can keep things human as we move into this more digitally enabled world. then I'll kick it over to should we try Vivian again? Is the mic working this time?
Katya, you want to try while we get him back online?
Oh, great. I feel like the winner here. Well, thank you for having me. I'm Katia Zhang, and this is my first time at GatherVerse, although I have heard of this amazing organization for a very long time already through many of my friends. I am the founder of Deep Coalition, and DEEP stands for Do Express Empathy Proactively. So we are a global movement, and the movement is about building bridges between the 1% and the 99%. And what that means is we condition, not correct, or really tell people how to go about with developing voice, but we condition organizations and their people to build a name presence using our marketing tools and art, music, and our technique, which is creative expressive writing. And then we leverage LinkedIn in that process to train executives, entrepreneurs, and employees on how to become a deep voice on LinkedIn. And what does that mean when we're leveraging and learning how to sell our words before we sell our products and services. And so that is what we do today is we love technology, but at the same time, we're trying to bring the human voice back into technology, leveraging LinkedIn and displaying that for the world to see so that people can better take control of their work and life, leveraging LinkedIn to help them with that. But at the same time, really focusing on who they are beyond their papers and their work experiences.
Wow, I think rather than just having the session, I think I want to sign up to come to all your services. And it's funny you bring up empathy. I, amongst other things, I contribute to several ethical AI standards, and one is of which is called the 7014, and that is on empathy. It's it's a standard on the emulated empathy, considerations for emulated empathy in autonomous systems and artificial intelligence. So it's interesting that you brought that up. It invited me to put a plug in for the standard. It's about to be released in any day now. Do look it up. And I think IEEE is going to make it free. But speaking of empathy, I sometimes wonder if, and I would love to hear your thoughts about this, in terms of the workplace and all the transformation that's happening. Society is in a state of flux, I think we can all agree, with so much change, be it because of climate, be it because of the amount of digitization, be it after our lockdowns and the transition to so much online, that the workplace has changed so much, and finding a balance. Do you think, and just to go with a yes or no, and audience, please, if you would also engage on this one with a yes or a no, do you think there is sufficient empathy or consideration for the emotional well-being of people in the workplace? Is a yes or a no? We'll go around, Katya, and just circle back. I think we all see ourselves, and then we'll end up with the yellow.
Yes.
There's more empathy now than before.
I think it's more visible. So I think there has always been empathy. It's just more visible. And I think we can thank technology for that. And also empathy, I think it's because people are obviously now focused more on less on the why empathy and more about how can we create empathy. So I wouldn't say there's more. I think I'm seeing it more out in the open. That's all.
Right. I guess in the past, a lot of that was more of a taboo to talk about emotional health or what have you, and so that has been changed. Ricky, do you think that the transition and the use of technology and what have you, is there more empathy and compassion in the workplace, or?
So to be honest, I think my frame of reference for how much it's changed over the years is probably somewhat limited in scope. I'm on the younger side earlier on in my career, and so I don't have decades to pull from or anything. But I would say that the new technology that's kind of existing now with creating accessibility and global connection, it's opening more doors for empathy, because I think we're feeling more of this tension where we have different cultures that just talk and communicate a little bit differently, and they're more connected and working together more than they ever have. And so you kind of have to lead with empathy or you won't be able to work productively together. There's all the mental health movement things that are going on as well, of course. But I think to me, the cultural connection is what stands out the most, is how do we connect with people from different countries, from different backgrounds, and be able to work productively together. And I think, is it more than it was before? I'm not really sure. Is it going in that direction where it could be? I think so.
Do you want to drop?
Please. Yeah, talk on that. Yes.
Okay, so I actually have a fair amount to add on this. So when it comes to mental health, I'll answer yes, because I think the pandemic, right, really brought an awakening to mental health. And I think that that's the door that's been pushed open. And so many people have been raising their hands saying, yes, we need it and it's important. So it is evolving, right? Just from that awareness factor alone. So mental health, right? When it comes to self-awareness, conscious awareness, those are key things that are making a profound difference. They've done studies like UMass Chan Medical Center has been studying this for over 40 years. So people who have self-awareness can reduce their pain dramatically within their physical body and what they experience. It's much more like you kind of like learn how your body works, and you learn to basically master your own system, right? Learn the correct operating order. So I think that that's going to be coming. I don't think, I know, right? We're on the forefront and the cusp of that and evolving and developing that. And I think technology is going to help fast track that. Technology will help fast track many of these things. The key is we have to be visionary in the design. That's where the compassion and the empathy comes back in to the equation. We haven't necessarily had compassion and empathy in the designs of the past, but the designs of the future will have them. I firmly believe this. Moving forward. And it's more of a visionary and critical thinking approach.
Absolutely. We're counting on it. We're counting on integrating also human rights into standards that would help drive policy and start making a shift in the thinking and in the way we advance things. But Sam, what do you think?
Yeah. It's interesting because when you ask this question, I feel like I sit on the fence from the things that I'm seeing, because I do think that there's more opportunity out there for, expressing an emotional awareness and the awareness around mental health. And I think there's just so much opportunity of where it's going in the future. And I think it's essential for our future and our growth and our evolution. In my experience, I work more with large corporations, some that maybe are not evolving and growing, and I see just as much resistance to this. And in fact, when I've interviewed some of my peers at a local university where I teach, it was interesting because some of the business professors talked about empathy being a Trojan horse approach for coming out of the pandemic, basically saying that they had increased levels of empathy and compassion, but it wasn't genuine in nature. It was almost like embracing the buzzwords. And so although I see that there's more that's happening and there's more people awakening up, those previous designs that didn't have empathy embedded in them, that resistance is still there. And so I don't know how much genuine empathy we're still seeing out in the workplace versus new. And it's completely different based off where you're working to and how long that organization has been around. So.
Thank you.
Did you want me to go next?
Yes, please. No, we'll give him a minute.
Okay. So I'm a little bit of a contrarian on this question, although I do think it's a great question. All great points that you've made. I will say this. I think that the optics that we are more empathetic are there. I think you're right. We're seeing things that are showing that our organizations are trying to instill this in us. However, I think there's a problem with empathy. Okay. We get stuck in it. So yes, we work hard to feel and understand how other people are feeling, but we don't do anything with it. And so that next step of actually doing something is compassion. And that's what I think we're all looking for, is compassion, like empathy in action. Like it's one thing to say, I totally get where you're coming from and I'm with you, but that doesn't really do anything. It doesn't move the needle on anything. So I think there's a misunderstanding of the difference between empathy and compassion. And then I also think that, well, I love the idea of the buzzword, because that's very true. Empathy is sort of lost its luster because we use that word so much. And people can have it, but it doesn't seem to change anything. So I think that's what we're looking for. So
I love that you said that, because if you heard me at the last GatherVerse, the AI Summit, I said exactly that. I said empathy, and I often say that empathy without compassion is a dangerous weapon.
it
Because to
really is.
understand, and that's why we have to regulate AI that manipulates emulates your your emotion, or emulates empathy, and make you feel like, it's talking to you, that it's and even in generative AI, there is those elements of, oh, you're being heard, so which ends up nudging you in whichever way, whether it's in your interest or not. But before we go on to some more of digging into that, and the impact of AI, and assessing even the technology in the workplace, where and I'll leave you to think through this for a minute while Vivian answers, is there are technologies, obviously, whether it's in the classroom or at work, where through the camera or through whatever, they're sensing your emotions or sensing your state of being. So I'd be curious to know if you think that is something that is good or bad, and does it have a place, this technology? What is the role of it? Never mind. Following on to that, is I would like to know if you all think that we will have a job in the next 5 or 10 years. But Vivian, you tell us, do you think empathy, on the point of empathy?
I
We
love,
were talking, yeah.
I love what Betty said, and empathy is thrown out. It's used so commonly, but empathy without compassion, I truly think that's really important, because in today's times, irrespective of AI, in the last couple of years that it has taken center stage, there is also the attention deficit that's prevalent. Uh, while you're saying, oh, I feel sorry for this situation, you're scrolling on your phones, even in meetings and in everything. So it's very important for us to practice that empathy. It's like faith without actions. It means nothing. So I'm with the thought everybody has shared here.
So what do you think? And we didn't have a chance to hear you earlier. If you want to introduce yourself, and then maybe
Oh, yes.
a question of, do you think technology is advancing our human rights and our privacy, or are we being invaded, and will we be in the way it's applied? And do you think we will continue to have a if our jobs will or will not be replaced in some years, and what does that mean?
Thank you. So, quick introduction. I'm Vivian Gomes. Sorry about the audio mess up earlier. I'm based in San Francisco. I'm a chief design officer of a studio here, which is an international studio delivering mostly on implementation side of technology rather than the glamour side of it. And yeah, we help companies bridge those gaps from idea to implementation. Coming to your question, I think technology, if you see the histories of it, is always an enabler. So there's no fear as of AI or anything is concerned. Conscious efforts are very much important and required, because there are two sides of the questions we were chatting earlier, Lubana, on our chat. That one is that it is the narratives that needs to change. We won't be losing our jobs if we are resilient to understanding what we're doing. Simple things about how to use these technologies that are these as good as tools that we had in the olden times. Just like the old famous Henry Ford story of horses versus the need for a machine. And the other part is the overconfidence use of untested, which is always dangerous. So the danger comes when everybody goes all in without understanding and using these tools. For example, 6 months ago, I was talking to, because we also recruit and do manpower consulting for building teams. I was working with this excellent recruitment team of a company. I cannot mention that name, but over 6 months of training, the entire recruitment team in January was laid off because of the privilege, and the monster they trained is the monster they ate up their jobs, is one of them said to me. And I think it's the other way around. If you know how to harness and use that capability, AI is not taking your jobs. To be resilient, I come from a background of an art. I used to hand paint, design, do things for Disney. To here, we are creating technology enabled products and services for startups at Google to anywhere in the world, to governments and even military services.
Anybody else wants to comment on that?
I mean, I'll jump in on this quickly, and I will say that so from the neuroscience standpoint of things, I work with also like neuroscience, psychologists, neurology, right? So I look at kind of like all aspects and wheelhouses of it, and I'm talking to professionals in these fields all the time. So that's why I keep coming back to conscious awareness, which we agree upon. So the thing that I can tell you is that, our training tools, I look at our medical designs and I look at a lot of what's coming out, and the fact that everything now can be done, right? Even like, dissecting things, right, can be done visually and with the movement of a hand and a wand, right? Like wanding things. And so the thing is that I will tell people, and based off of the people who have also worked, with our military and conscious awareness and developing their skills, is that there's still an element of the physical aspect of things in the human world that have to be applied in order for you to have the proper skill set to do many of these things, right? So you can't just learn now how to do it in thin air and have it be expected to be the same as when you enter a surgical room. So these are the key factors, right? So the other strong component from the individual that I was working with who has dealt with, our military and training conscious awareness, same thing. He said the thing is that, yes, you can exercise and you can do different things with the lobes of the brain, but it's not the same as when you actually have physical exercises that are attached, that are actually embedding the information into the brain. And then on the third note on here, I want to quickly say, we mentioned ADHD or, attention deficit. My youngest was diagnosed when she was 10 with it, and I refused to medicate her. I trained her and taught her that this is a gift, right? So you think faster. That's a gift, right? So the thing is that, to our point, without critical thinking and visionary thinking in our design, oftentimes we unknowingly, literally just unknowingly design some of these things, and we don't know the outcome until years later. I'm the first generation to grow up on computers, right? So I'm dating myself, Ricky. I am decades into this, right? So I can give some testimonial for the decades side of things. And so these generations that are coming through, they're not learning in encyclopedias anymore, right? And my children were like encouraged to read and are novel readers, like they love it. But not everybody is, right? And so now all of a sudden, when you're consuming information in a different way, and even though my little one is an incredible reader and writer, she still, right, had that diagnosis. So it's not a faster thinker is not going to fit in the existing education systems, because the existing education systems are encyclopedia taught and designed for manufacturers. We are in a creative era now. It's almost like a swoop of like, okay, now we're coming back into this whole mass creative cycle again. And technology will peak it, but we also need to be mindful of practical application and actually embedding some of these things into our brain as we go through the process.
Yeah, I just want to double click on one thing you were talking about there, because I think it's, especially in the XR industry, kind of under talked about, is that idea of like physical application of the skill set that you're training. 100%. Like if you're going to be a welder, you need to actually use welding tools and go experience the heat and the temperature and be in that environment. If you're going to be a doctor, you need to work on real cadavers in med school. Like that's 100% a requirement in order to achieve those skill sets. I think the magic of these simulated environments, whether that be a virtual 3D space or an AI simulator for soft skills where you can practice difficult conversations or something like that, the key there is just additional repetitions. Like we're able to scale the accessibility to it. So it's less expensive up front for someone to participate in exploring those skill sets or those potential career paths. But then they're also able to learn things much faster and have more time to master it, so that by the time they get to the physical application, they feel like they're more prepared for it. So I think that's the key with all of these pieces of technology is they're scaling things, right? So they're either going to replace things that people just don't want to do at all. For example, when photography started, painters didn't have to focus on documentation painting anymore. They could just focus on creative painting. It changed where those skill sets got to focus their energy. So I think that's the key when we talk about technical innovation, is it's always meant to enhance human skill sets and abilities so we can focus our energy where we're most interested, where it's most valuable. And there's a lot of uncertainty there, which is why, we fear about getting replaced. We fear about where our jobs can go. I think the more optimistic we are about the technology, the more we believe what it's capable of. And so that leads us to seeing the dangers of it and where it could go. But the reality is it also opens up incredible doorways for people to pick up these career paths they may have never been able to have access to before.
Right. And it's funny because I think what I'm hearing you say is that our educational system needs to come up to speed so that it's actually upskilling our children and augmenting them with the, or I think not just the children, but even the educators and all of us at scale, so that we understand the change that's happening around us, and then which taken us to a place where we and the machine are working together, which is that whole field of human machine teaming. Betty, I saw you like your spotty emotion language of yours was like you were ready to jump on something, but maybe when Rick was speaking, was that did you have something to add to that?
Well, I lit up because he's talking about VR specifically, so that's one thing. But the thing that kept coming to my mind was Sinead Bavell. I don't know if you guys have heard of her before. She speaks out a lot on AI and other technologies. She's a tech advisor for CNN and things like that. She says that the best thing that we can do about the future is prepare for it. And so it's just that's what kept coming to my head is as you guys were talking, and as the question around are we upskilling? You had a question in the comments, Lubna, about do you believe your employer are doing enough to upskill employees? Like, I think I agree with Sinead. The best thing we can do about the future is to prepare for it. And sometimes we don't know how to do that. We just have to do the next right thing. And so that might be learning about this technology change, learning more about AI, for example, and trying to make our own determination if it's going to take our job or someone else's job that we know. I think the answer to that question is maybe, because there are some jobs that AI could do more efficiently. And then there are some jobs that it can't do without that human interaction. For example, I went to CES, the largest trade show in the US. Highly recommend it. Also recommend that you are prepared, because it's kind of like they took everyone whoever went to Disney World in one day and put them all in Las Vegas at the same time. So anyways, a lot of people there. And at CES, there were a lot of different things that are kind of wild and crazy out there that I wasn't sure about. But there was this one thing that really stopped me. And it was like this, it was a machine that could make 60 meals in an hour, I think it was, at a total cost of like $4.50 to pay for that machine to make those meals. And so that got me thinking, could this machine, this automation, replace some jobs? Some jobs, yes, but somebody still had to design that recipe and load that. The machine can't load itself. You see what I'm saying? So it's like the best thing I think we can do is to really think critically about what it is that's coming down the pipe, how it's going to affect us directly, and then just do the next right thing as far as getting ourselves and those around us ready. That's kind of what I was thinking as my eyes were going crazy.
I light up when you said CS, because there's some really interesting technologies there where AI and other sensor-based technology, where it was guiding a blind person through walking, they're able to walk without walking into
Yes.
things, and without needing to also, especially at higher things, when something might hit them in the face that a guide dog might not. So I mean, technology can play a fantastic role, and it can diagnose, it can read X-rays, it can do a lot of things that better than what we can. But the question is, then what are we doing about ourselves, and how are we adopting, and are we doing enough in terms of policy, in terms of on preparing ourselves for a better future? Sam, what do you think?
I think it's interesting because, one of the things that's fascinated me with technology and how it's evolved, specifically when we get into AI and even like VR, which completely changed, learning and development, which is where I started at. And what it really comes down to is we've been horrible, and I'm going to speak as an HR professional because that's where my background is, but we've been really bad at job design since the very beginning. Like and we still do this, like, oh, we're overworked, so we just add a job. And we saw this during the global pandemic, that it was so quick to just eliminate jobs when we needed to, and we had these mass layoffs. And so to what Betty is saying is, yeah, there's jobs that technology can do better, or it can complement and make us more productive. And I think what's really interesting is, if we get really visionary about it, is if that machine that's making those meals replaces those jobs that most of the people who are probably doing those jobs can't make ends meet anyway. So we can go right into compensation and think about that minimum wage, they're not really living a life. And so how do we now start to create jobs that make people feel valuable? Because really technology is replacing a lot of these redundancies. Like for me, it made my life so much easier. Like as an introvert, it helps me identify how to send an extroverted email sometimes. ChatGPT has allowed me to connect with people in ways that I never really thought I could do, or save me time and drafting all kinds of stuff. And but really, like, how can we now create jobs that allow employees to engage, that can make and earn wages where they can live life and have a balanced life? Because that's really going back to your question about empathy and compassion. Like going through the global pandemic, we just saw all this burnout. And the one thing that I'll say that's kind of like linking back to just the fear component that we keep hearing about. And I think the biggest struggle with technology right now is, the people that are resisting and are afraid, it's from a capacity place. From a traditional Chinese medicine perspective, when we are tired, the first thing that happens emotionally is we get afraid, and specifically we get afraid of the future. So people who are burnt out and overworked, there's a direct tie to this idea that I'm exhausted, I'm overworked, and I'm terrified of the future. And so those are my defense mechanisms that come out. Oh, I love Betty with the hearts. That's so cool.
I love it. Wait, let me go find the hearts. I want a heart.
Yeah, I'll do
that. I love you guys.
I have something to add on this topic. It's actually very near and dear to my heart. So I know we talk a lot about what do people do, right? Once technology takes over them, if they're a factory worker, right, and a machine comes in and it's now packing the chips and putting it in the box. If you are a marketer, right, there's also applications out there that can write more effective, powerful messages than you do. So maybe marketers will lose their jobs, or copywriters. And if you are someone who is, let's say, an office worker, right? You might not be needed for certain data entry functions that you're doing, because now it can be pulled from sources or from third-party providers. And so I work with diverse employees and diverse leaders from across the industry. So I'll just mention that kind of like being everywhere, anywhere, all at once. That's kind of how my life journey has unfolded for me. And in that journey, I've been able to kind of see, okay, technology, it's a tool, but how can I work around it? What are the things about technology that I can use on the things that I don't want to do or that I don't enjoy? And then what are some of those things that I can still keep, because it's part of being human, and technology cannot, to your point, to many of your points, become that critical thinker. They cannot be true visionaries. They cannot be as strategic as a human. And so I constantly find that when I'm working with small groups and one-on-one coaching people on transferable skills, how to be resilient, how to be adaptable, and that the question keeps on coming back to, well, Katia, I just got laid off, and I've been working in this job for 10 plus years. And so what do I do now? How can I better control my work and life now? And I said, well, during those 10 years, did you explore any other types of jobs or responsibilities or topics? Or did you just go to the factory, work, and come back home, and that was the only skill set that you built? And so I think one thing employers can do is, offer the kind of training that can help to encourage and motivate employees to go out there and explore different types of job duties that are still similar to, let's say, if they're in finance, that's still in the financial services industry, but maybe they're no longer doing accounting, right? Maybe now they're doing a little bit of consulting work for small businesses. Maybe now they're doing more spreadsheet related work. And so I don't really think that technology is ever going to be a true enemy. I think technology can help us to think deeper and to work around it so that we can actually find ideas and ways that technology could just never replace. And to go about that, I tell people the way I see things is, I remember graduating from high school with mediocre grades, right? I think 3.2. And my sister was valedictorian, right? She went to an Ivy League college. I went to a small private college that was very entrepreneur based. But I saw the opportunity there where I could connect with different professors, learn all kinds of different life skills, where she was focused more in liberal arts and certain topics that would still take her to go into the workforce and find out, oh, how am I going to apply this to the workforce? How am I going to actually make use of this that I learned in the books? And so the way I see it is employees, at the end of the day are students. We're all students. And it's on us to find skills that we think can be transferable in our career. And our career is not necessarily tied to one specific job title or job type, but continue to grow in that career and find those gifts and talents that we didn't develop previously, and work on those. And so whenever I hear about, okay, well, Katia, how can we do that? Well, if you are, let's say, a financial advisor and you now want to explore becoming a journalist, connect to journalists on LinkedIn, talk to them. Google is your best friend. That's technology. Search what their job descriptions are. Attend some webinars by these journalists. Get a feel for their jobs. Shadow them that way if you cannot get in front of someone and hold their hands and go out in the field. And then you'll be able to get a good idea of, oh, you know what I'm actually missing is communication skills. No, that is a transferable skill. And writing skills, not writing an essay or dissertation paper, but writing to another human, my boss, coworker, a client. Writing in a human way that technology cannot replace, because maybe that's focused on products and specific details that's related to the business. But how can I develop that kind of communication skill that I can take it with me everywhere? How can I develop certain skills, let's say relationship building skills that I can take with me everywhere, networking skills. And so continue to look at that Rolodex of skills and topics and be open to learning a few of those. Obviously don't have to go crazy, right? But if you've been stuck in this position for long and you hear about technology coming and robots taking over, right? Chat GPT taking over writing, don't be afraid of it, but consider it, okay, this might be a good friend coming in, taking over the boring task that I don't want to do. Now, how can I beat this robot and work on the things that she, he, they cannot do? And so I think that might be a positive way to kind of look at AI technology in general, and put together a strategic plan, a tactical plan, if you will, right, step by step. Whether your employer offers you these skills or not, there are plenty of people out there who are multi-talented. I don't believe anybody is skilled in one thing. You may have one job that's a doctor, but you are maybe a motivational speaker, an author. You are maybe doing other things, volunteering, right? So you also know enough about nutrition, if that's what you're talking about, DEI. And so I think the mentality going in with technology is to see that it really is there to serve you. And now you have to find other ways that's more meaningful, that it cannot do effectively. It may be able to do it efficiently, but it cannot do effectively without the human mind, and focus on building those skill sets.
Yes, indeed. So you wanted to say something, Ricky?
Yes, I want to jump in on this really quickly. I just wanted to say that what we're talking about here is conscious versus subconscious mind. So subconscious mind, it has a tendency to manage all of our skill, like our tasking, right? Our tasking work. So think of AI as like now managing the tasking type stuff for us, right? That's what it has the capability to do. Consciousness, right, coupled with passion, which is essentially what you've been saying. When a person follows their passion, they're capable of anything. So find something that maybe is a passion if you haven't done that in the past previously, and then pursue that. Conscious awareness is what a computer cannot do, right? A computer cannot be consciously aware. Technology does not have that capability. So when you're in the present moment and you're actually paying attention to things, you're going to be able to handle and manage these challenges, right, that we're faced with, whether it be transitioning jobs or job titles or job functions, or now looking for a passion or whatever the case may be. You're going to have the capability to do that with so much more grace and ease. And the more calm you can stay, the better your results will be in that capacity. And I'm going to just drop this, and then I'm going to drop the mic and let everybody else go. But I wanted to also just bring it full circle with my daughter. So she was failing out in the 6th grade, right? Everybody was like, she can't focus. I'm like, I know my daughter, she can focus on anything that she truly loves. And that held true. And then she found, to your point of everybody talking about, hey, find your own solution, right? In this situation. If you know you're going to be faced with it, then do a little critical thinking of your own. She found a charter school. She was able to report on subject matter that she got to choose. That was the biggest difference. She graduated 2 years early. We started her photography business. She is now 27, and we started it when she was 15, and she's still doing it successfully.
Wow. You have a 27-year-old? I want to know what
creams you 33, yeah.
But Vivian, are we designing into our system's ability to actually enable people to work with them such that we can expand our minds and tap into our passions? You know, in the past that wasn't okay. By the way, I've been repeatedly diagnosed with attention deficit, and I say that means, so it's another way of being polymathic. You know, you have multiple interests, and thank you for saying you can process faster, so I can talk a lot faster. No, I'm kidding. But it's true. We need to break these frames, and maybe technology will help us come out of this conditioning of what we can and can't do, and what was right and what is wrong. That you should do this and should do that, but and can't do this because you're a he or a she or a they or a whatever you may be. But are we doing enough, Vivian, in terms of designing systems? Because I know you're in design to ease the onboarding of that experience. Because I mean, as a technologist in the past, I had this fight a lot where we designed technology for the sake of technology, not for the sake of a human.
Yes. I would like to give a case study, actually, one that really touched my heart. It's a startup in India, and I met them while at Google for Startups as a mentor for a wildcard entry, because they were making robots for manual scavenging, and nobody knew how to handle that. But cut the chase to 5-6 years later. Not only did these youngsters who built this robot, I'll tell you what the robot does. They changed the mindset of all the things that we talked about. One is the ability and skills that were difficult for somebody to onboard and learn. Second was the fear of job being taken away. And third, the person who likely or very unlikely handled such a thing as technology was actually controlling that technology. They built manual scavenging robots which now became a policy in India through the Honorable Prime Minister has passed a new law that manual scavenging is illegal in India because of this invention, which basically took over, and municipalities now deploy this, and the same manual scavenger would go into people's mess and clean it up and even die there sometimes, many times, is now the operator of this technology. So they have a dignified job. Their families are very proud of them, and it's a big moment. You can just search up Gen Robotics in India, and that's an example I wanted to bring because if we are able to do all of these things, follow the passion. Now these are engineers, and the thought behind the invention was that we have been able to send man to the moon, and technology can do all these things. But what about saving lives down the street? A simple thing that person will probably not even know how to use a mobile phone. This may be hard to understand for people who don't know what manual scavenging is, but that's the epitome of a good use case, I think. And design can draw that, because in design or from a aspect of design is always understanding people's mindsets and empathy, being in action through compassion, making things usable and making things uh, more natural for people instead of having to learn them. Like if I tell you open the door, you don't think twice to touch the handle of the door to push it right, left, forward, backward, or whichever way you want. Or when I tell you open a bottle or hold a cup, these are all natural ways that you've learned as motor habits. I think Alida would be able to elaborate more on that, on how we develop these habits. But that's where it is. Design can and will and is changing the way we are using these technologies.
I feel we're just warming up, and I've been given the 2-3 minute warning, and when if anybody else has a comment on this, that we keep it very short, and do make it ready. I can feel you. I can feel
I do have one quick thing.
Yes, and then after you said, just answer me with this. Are our governments doing enough? Do we need regulation? Do we need anything like that? And I've asked in the chat, should AI have rights? Because I've had these debates before, like human rights. So go ahead.
The thing I wanted to say was just that the good news is that we've done this reskilling, upskilling, new skilling thing before. I mean, if you think 100 years ago, which was 1924, by the way, which used to be 50 years ago. I'm not really sure how it became 100 years ago, but people's jobs were to lay railroad. We don't do that anymore. Not really. Not in the US. It's all done. Now we just maintain it, and we don't even use the rail the way that we used to. You see what I'm saying? Like there's everything changes. And so we're just sort of doing that again. So redefining the work that we do and how we do it is not something that's new. But the future is always scary when you're in the present, right? It's always scary when you're looking ahead at it. So that's kind of just what I wanted to say based on the whole upskilling, reskilling conversation. As far as your question around, are we doing enough to regulate? I think we need to do more. I'm not sure we could go any faster. I don't know. I think if we went any faster, it would be scarier. I think we would miss things. So I think there's definitely more to come with that. We should just keep going.
And should AI have rights, like human rights? Yes or no?
I think we still have. It's too soon to say. My gut instinct is no, but it's really too soon to say.
A few years ago, I was in a room and this topic came up, and one, I'm not sure how I feel about him still. This gentleman stands up and said, I think it should fight for its rights like women have to still. But anyway, who wants to? We have to wrap up. So anybody else want to make a comment on are we doing enough, and should I have rights? And I just will say myself, will remind everybody as I close, is that we should all remember that we work to live and not live to work. So any other comments on the topics before we thank Chris for giving us the opportunity to do this, and I hope we can all get together again and continue this in more depth, because I feel like this was just a warm-up. Okay.
I just want to say thank you, Lubna. It's been wonderful, and everybody else here.
Thank you. Well, thank you very, very much, all of you. I am so grateful to be in your presence. The future is brighter because people like you are here, and I will be definitely needing the spiritual and the consciousness support, and so I'll be calling on you. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you, Chris, for giving us all this opportunity. Thank you, GatherVerse family, for sharing your time with us. Thank you.